Let's talk about the Outgunned RPG. Outgunned is a cinematic action RPG that emulates classic action and heist movies like Die Hard, James Bond, Ocean's 11, Hot Fuzz, or John Wick. You play as a group of heroes struggling against a villain and succeeding against terrible odds. Today I'm going to provide a brief overview, go over character creation, and finally touch on how to play Outgunned online. While I won't cover the mechanics in detail, I might record some more videos about Outgunned in the future. So leave a comment if there are any particular topics you'd like me to cover next. Outgunned was created by Two Little Mice, an Italian RPG publisher. They ran a successful Kickstarter earlier this year, and at this point all the PDFs have been delivered and they expect to deliver the physical products around next March. I have to give them kudos. Despite having all kinds of stretch goals in the Kickstarter, they've managed to stay on track. That's no small feat. You can tell that they've run a couple of successful Kickstarters in the past. Mechanically, Outgunned is an evolution of the system they used in Broken Compass. For context, Broken Compass was a prior game that they released in 2021, and there are a lot of things I really liked about Broken Compass, but Outgunned further improves upon it. It's worth noting that Two Little Mice no longer own the Broken Compass IP, but it is still available from the new owner, Simon or Come On, I'm not sure how you pronounce their company name. In terms of setting, where Broken Compass emulated pulp adventure movies, books, or video games like Indiana Jones, Tomb Raider, or Uncharted, Outgunned emulates action movies in a more contemporary setting, typically set in the 90s or early 2000s. So the main thing is really that they're set before smartphones came out or social media. And they've adapted the game accordingly. There are helpful mechanics for fighting hordes of goons, doing car chases, and pulling off heists. Let's look at a couple pages in the book. So here's the cover, Outgunned, cinematic action role-playing game. I'm going to jump over to page 66 here, look at the success mechanic. So Outgunned uses the same core mechanic as Broken Compass, which is based on rolling matches. The higher the number of matches, the greater the success. So as you see here, 2 of a kind is a basic success. 3 of a kind is a critical success, 4 of a kind extreme, 5 of a kind impossible, and then if you get 6 or more of a kind, that's called the jackpot, which is pretty unlikely, but not impossible. Depending on the situation you're dealing with, you might need a different level of success. If you don't get the success you need on the first roll, but you get at least a basic success, then you can choose to re-roll any dice that are not part of the success. However, if you don't end up getting a better success, you lose your original success, so it's a bit of a gamble. There's more to it than that, but I won't cover this in detail right now. I do think it's a really cool mechanic though. I like the gambling aspect a lot. Die rolls are entirely player-facing in Outgunned, which frees up the GM, or called the director here, to focus on moving the story forward in interesting ways. For example, in combat or during chase scenes, rounds are divided into action and reaction turns. During the action turn, the players decide what action their characters take and roll the dice accordingly. During the reaction turn, the director describes what challenge the heroes need to defend against and what skill to roll. Typically, it's the same roll for all of the heroes, which keeps the action moving quickly. Yes, this isn't necessarily realistic, but Outgunned isn't a simulationist kind of game. It's all about fast-paced action. Failure during combat or other dangerous situations typically results in losing grit, the game's stress track. After it fills up all the way, they need to roll against the death roulette to see if they are okay or they get left for dead. It's worth pointing out that outside of these situations, failure essentially always means failing forward. After all, they are competent heroes. If they try to break open a locked door or jump out of a window, they absolutely succeed. They just might face some consequences, such as enemy guards, or perhaps lose some gear in the process. Speaking of enemies, as a director, one of the things I really like is how Outgunned handles enemies. Mechanically, enemies are generally super simple. They just have a grid track and attack and defense scores. That's it. Outgunned provides templates for different types and levels of enemies, from basic goons to bosses. Here, for example, we see the 5 templates for simple goons. The weakest just have a couple of points of grid and a basic attack and defense. And then the strong ones have a much longer grid track and critical attack, still basic defense, so they're still pretty easy to take down. Next we see bad guys, so those have a little bit more oomph. And then finally we have bosses. As you see here, the strongest of those even have extreme attack and defense. So they can do quite a bit of damage, and it takes quite a bit to take them down. There's a way to make certain enemies more unique by giving them feats or special actions. Feats are things like bulletproof vests or explosives that give them an advantage in certain situations. Special actions can be activated at certain times when they tick a hotbox on the grid track, and might allow them to tackle, disarm, or surround the heroes, for example. But these are totally optional, so for bread and butter enemies, you can easily improv them without any prior prep. There's even a list of bespoke, on-demand enemies, so a group of ninjas or a villain's private army or something like that. So you can really just pick those from here, depending on what happens. One last thing I want to mention before we move into character creation are the extra books that came with the Kickstarter. First, we have Action Flicks. This is a set of mini expansions that allow you to use Outgunned for entirely different settings. Most of these are established settings with the serial numbers filed off, and filed off very thinly. So, for example, you see Star Raiders, which is essentially Star Wars. There's Weirder Things, which is Stranger Things, right? Kids on Bikes. And Ghost Hunters, for example, which of course is Ghostbusters. There's also cyberpunk, kung fu, and all kinds of other genres. Each action flick consists of new roles or tropes, some rules tweaks, and other information that's needed to play in that setting. Let's take a quick look at Ghost Hunters, for example. I think from the image it's quite obvious what we're going for here. You can clearly see that it's supposed to be Ghostbusters. And if you look at the introductory text, there's even an homage to Harold Ramis, who portrayed Egan Spengler in the original movie. See Dr. Ramis in here. On the next page, we have a couple of themes and adventure ideas. Then there are rules for ghosts and even for crossing the streams. After that, we have some new feats and tropes that map to the Ghostbusters main characters. And finally, some ghosts templates and special actions, and even some special on-demand ghosts like the obnoxious ectoplasm, or the ghost with the most, or the Flying Dutchman. And last not least, there are some custom-styled character sheets. All of the action flicks get their own. It's really the same sheet as far as I can tell, just with a slightly different style, and there's also a pre-gen filled in. The other book that's important to mention is World of Killers. This is an entire 200-page setting book that's essentially the John Wick universe. So it's all about assassins, different factions, and it's a really cool setting. If you haven't watched the movies, they're really cool. So in here you get new roles, a description of various factions, new rules, and a whole cinematic campaign. This seems like it would be a really fun setting to play in, actually. Alright, so next let's take a look at how to create an Outgunned character. So this is what the blank character sheet looks like. They did a really nice job with this, I have to say. It's also nice that they provide form-fillable PDFs by default, which not all RPG publishers do. So really appreciate that. There's a lot on here, but it's actually quite simple after you look at it a little bit. On the left-hand side, we have the attributes: brawn, nerves, smooth, focus, and crime. And then below each of the attributes, we have four specific skills. So in case of brawn, for example, we have endure, fight, force, and stunt. We'll be filling this out as part of character creation. Let's quickly look at the other stuff on here. There's a list of feats. So those are kind of things that make your character a little bit special, right? Give them something, some advantage typically that they have that other characters don't have. Grit is relevant during the game. This is essentially the stress track for Outgunned. What I really like about it, even though we're not going to talk about the mechanics in detail today, is that when you hit certain points on the stress track, something special happens. So when you get to this point here that says bad, you suffer a condition. And when you fill up the stress track all the way, get to this hot box here, you gain 2 adrenaline. So it's actually a good thing, even though you've pushed yourself to the brink, right? And bad things are likely to happen. But this is your opportunity to shine as a hero. There's a couple other meta currencies here. We have Spotlight and Adrenaline, for example. This is just a place to jot down experiences that you've gained over the course of your sessions. You Look, this is essentially your conditions that you can get during the game. And over here is the Death Roulette. So if you fill up your grit, there's basically a chance that you're going to get left for dead, and you roll on this Death Roulette. And over time, this fills up more, so it's going to get harder and harder to successfully defend against death, basically. And down here, we just have your gear, guns, and other stuff. And then if you have a ride, like a motorcycle or something, you can jot it down here. And here's your cash. Yeah, it just tracks cash at an abstract level. So here we see the steps involved in making a character. It's pretty straightforward. So we first choose a role, fill in our personal data, name and such. We choose a trope. Then we mark the attribute and skill points gained from your role and trope. We get 2 free skill points to choose from. And note down 3 feats, also from role and trope. Get the gear from the role. Yeah, mark off some of these meta currencies, and that's it. So it's really straightforward. So the first step is selecting a role. Here's the list of roles. We'll look at a couple of them. There's also some advice in the book. It's essentially around thinking about what type of character you want to play. What role, literally, do you want to play in this group of characters? And how do you want to go about solving problems? So let's look at a couple of them. First up, we have the commando. This might be an elite soldier, a SWAT agent, member of special forces, an army veteran, or a survivalist ready for anything. There's a description. There's a list of possible jobs you might have in this role, right? You might be a soldier or a mercenary, for example. There's some catchphrases that you can select from, or you can make up your own. That's very much encouraged as well. So this might be nobody left behind. You pick a flaw. Maybe you don't trust anyone, or you think everyone else is weak. Or again, you can make up your own here as well. Some characteristics. Here we have the attribute point that this role grants, and the skill points that this role grants. And then a list of feats that you can choose 2 from. And finally, some gear. So it's pretty straightforward. Let's briefly flip through some of the other roles. There's the fighter, the ace. Here we have the agent, the face. Of course, you gotta have a face in your party. The nobody. I quite like this one. This is actually the one that we're gonna go with in our character creation today. The brain, of course. Can't miss the brain. There's the sleuth, which might be a private investigator, or maybe a bounty hunter or reporter. Criminal, and the spy. So it's quite a cool list of roles. So let's go back to the nobody. which we're going to use for our character today. Note that while this role represents a regular person, perhaps someone that's just in the wrong place at the wrong time, that does not mean that they're not a capable action hero. You'll notice that the classic nobody examples in the sidebar include iconic action heroes like Kurt Russell's main character from Big Trouble in Little China, Jack Burton. So let's go ahead and update our sheet based on this role. So for role, we're going to write the nobody. I'm going to leave the job open until later, until we have a better sense of who this character is. We'll just pick one of the existing catchphrases for now. Let's do this one. I didn't even want to come here. Okay, we got that. Let's pick a flaw as well. Maybe I trust everyone is a nice one, right? This character is a little bit too trustworthy. Now we need to fill in the attribute point for smooth, and then these skills down here. All right, so we're going to check off our smooth attribute. You'll notice that attributes actually start at 2 points out of 3. So your attributes are fairly high already, and you can just maximize them for 2 of them, basically. One from your role and one from your trope. Yeah, we've maxed out our smooth here. And now for skills, skills all start at 1. So we get fight, we get shoot, survival, leadership, speech, detect, fix, heal, know, and dexterity. All right, so that's our nobody for now. We could also pick one of these feats, but I'm going to hold off until we pick the trope, and then we'll have a better sense of what will go well together. We'll also go ahead and pick the age range for our character. Age is basically just young, adult, or old. So we're just going to go with adult. Picking a young or old character adds some trade-offs, but we'll just stick with adult for now. Now let's take a look at the tropes. So here's the list of tropes. The trope defines your archetype and mannerisms. So examples here, bad to the bone. You might be a cheater, or cool but distressed, die hard. Probably a nice homage to the movie here. Free spirit, genius, bruiser, good Samaritan, hot stuff, hunk, jerk with a heart of gold, last Boy Scout, Girl Scout, leader, lone wolf, mentor, neurotic geek, party killer, trusty sidekick, and vigilante. So there are 18 total. For our nobody character, we're gonna go with free spirit. I'm sort of envisioning a Californian surfer dude that somehow gets pulled into an adventure. So let's see how we can finish this character. All right, so we can choose actually whether we give our surfer dude a point in brawn or crime, and then we can assign a couple more skills. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's go with brawn in this case, because this character is going to be very physically adept. So we got that. And for skill points, he's going to get another point in fight. So fight's basically all maxed out now, right? That's going to be kind of a core competency of this character. He's going to get stunt, drive, survival. That's another one that's now maxed out. Style, fix, stealth, and streetwise. So that's it for attributes and skills for now. And there are ways to level those up throughout the campaign. So now let's go back and finalize our feats. So we can pick 1 feat from this list, and then we can also go back and pick 2 feats from the role list. I'm thinking parkour might actually be a nice one, and sort of goes with the surfer dude theme. Could even be a skater or something along those lines. So we're just going to jot down parkour, and let's look back at the role. All right, and from our role, I'm thinking that maybe I'll make a phone call. Could be nice. I can look at the feat definition in a sec, but it's basically that you have a contact that can help you with something, right? So our surfer dude could be well connected, and maybe Silver Tongue. They can talk themselves out of a hairy situation. So let's jot that down. All right, there's our feats. I'm not going to write these down on the character sheet. We can just look at them real quick, just so you have some idea of what these feats grant you. So this feat is I'll make a phone call. You have a contact, a friend, or a favor you can call in. It's just a phone call away. It takes a full turn, and you can call one of your contacts asking for a piece of information, a favor, a ride, or up to 3 cash. You gain whatever you asked for during the next timeout. The lightning symbol behind this means that this costs a point of adrenaline to activate, the main meta currency in this game. So you'll only be able to do this, so often, right? Whereas some of these feats you can activate all the time. The other one we went with is parkour. You're a free runner or an expert acrobat. You don't go down the stairs, you jump the whole ramp. Gain a free reroll when jumping, performing feats of acrobatics, or breaking a fall. I think that'll work nicely for our surfer dude. And last not least, we have Silver Tongue. Your words speak louder than actions, and you certainly know how to talk your way out of trouble. Gain a free reroll for all rolls made to lie, to persuade others, to find a compromise, or to bargain. So yeah, I think with that we'll have a nicely rounded out character. So let's go back here. I'm not going to bother filling these in, but normally I would kind of jot down what these feats do. We also get to pick 2 free skill points, regardless of role or trope. So I'm going to say our surfer dude is... I'll give him a point in flirt. And maybe a point in cool. How about that? So he's going to be able to deal with situations that come up. And then, of course, last not least, we need to come up with a name. Let's call him Chase Maverick. And, the trope, I didn't fill this in. Free spirit, job. I guess surfer isn't exactly a job per se. So maybe he could be a lifeguard, kind of Baywatch style. All right. And there we go. That's our surfer dude, Chase Maverick. So that's how you create an outgunned character. I really like this system. I think the combination of role and trope do a great job of shaping your character, and the choice of feats really lets you make it your own. My sense is that this works well both when you have a specific concept in mind, but also when you just browse through the pages to see what resonates with you. Another thing I want to show real quick is that in addition to the hero sheet, Outgunned also has sheets for the mission itself, which is basically the campaign, as well as for the director, aka GM. So let's briefly look at the mission sheet. So this is a nice place to write down all of the characters in the campaign. There's space for 4 of them. That's kind of the sweet spot for Outgunned, 3 to 4 characters. They say up to 5 kind of works pretty well as well. So you can jot down the characters and their roles. Here you can kind of keep track of what each shot was about. Shot is basically the term for a session here. There's a heat tracker. Throughout the mission, as the heroes get in tricky situations, the heat will continue to go up. And then over time, things will happen as a result of that. It's sort of a clock, basically. Here you can jot down some information about the villain. Maybe you discover some strong spots, but also maybe some weak spots. And then you can kind of track them here. There's a plan B that's a special little mechanic. You can track the party's ride if they have maybe a car or even a helicopter or a boat or something like that. And they can have some supporting characters. So like important NPCs, basically, or hirelings, I guess. from fantasy RPGs and their basic stats. They don't have the full stats that characters have. So it's kind of a nice, quick and dirty way of jotting those down, those recurring supporting characters. Also some space for contacts and clues. And the director sheet here, that's again just for the director. You wouldn't typically show this to the players. So that's kind of a nice helpful sheet for me to jot down some of the same information, just so I have it in front of me conveniently. This is used during chase scenes, the need for speed, get it? And of course, I can jot down some special enemies here that I might use during this campaign, and also the supporting characters. So some nice little tools for your campaign. Okay, let's now talk a bit about how to play Outgunned online. If you've watched my previous video on whether you really need a VTT to play RPGs online, you know that my general preference is to use a low-key solution like Google Sheets plus Discord. That's true in this case as well, especially since Outgunned is a game that works well with theater of the mind and doesn't require maps or tokens. As you've seen, the game comes with really nice form-fillable PDF character sheets, so these would work just fine for online play. But personally, I like using Google Sheets for ease of collaboration, so everyone can easily see each other's sheets. So I went ahead and made a character sheet in Google Sheets. So here we go. I tried to keep the style at least somewhat similar to the PDF sheet we just looked at, but I rearranged the information a bit to move to a more vertical layout, which tends to work better in browsers, as horizontal scrolling is a bit tedious. I put all the important status-related information towards the top. So here we have our grit track, we have adrenaline, and spotlight. And this way we can minimize scrolling during the game. I think it's kind of nice how you can just, check things off. We have the bad and hot trackers here. A nice thing about sheets is also that you can add notes to fields. So here I can have a little legend that says what this means, right? So bad means you suffer a condition, hot means you gain 2 adrenaline. So I have the same for adrenaline and spotlight. So you can kind of leave hints in a bunch of places. And everything else is pretty similar. We got our attributes here, we got our skills, got our age drop down. Here's the death roulette, place for feats, cash, and then scrolling down we have our ride, experiences, and a convenient place for notes. So I'm pretty happy with how this turned out. For now, I only have the hero sheet, but I'll probably create a mission sheet and a director sheet as well at some point. But I think the hero sheet is, of course, the most important one. I'll put the link in the video description in case you want to use this for your own games. And then, of course, as usual, I'm planning to use Discord for voice and video, as well as for dice. There's a nice dice bot called Outgunned. I'll also put that link into the description. So let's take a quick look at that. All right, here we have a little test thread. So I use /roll. I have a bunch of other dice bots in here as well. So ignore those. For now, I'm just going to use this Outgunned bot. The syntax is really simple. It's just /roll and then the number of dice that you want to roll. So let's say we are rolling 5 dice. Maybe we have the skill at 3 and the attribute at 2, which adds up to 5. And here we go. We got 2 basic successes. You'll notice, by the way, that this uses some special symbols on the dice. Those are actually the same symbols as the physical dice that came with the Outgunned Kickstarter. Those are totally optional. They're really just regular 6-sided dice, but because Outgunned only cares about matches and not about the actual numbers, they kind of have some nice thematic dice that are just a little bit more fun, but you can totally just use any old d6s. So here we have 2 basic successes. Let's say we need a critical success for whatever we're trying to accomplish. So I can now do a reroll, which again means that if I get something better as a result, that's great. Otherwise, I lose one of the basic successes that I have. So I just need to click on this R here. So we're going to reroll, and seems to be having an issue. Maybe there's a bug in it. All right, let's try this again. So we're going to roll 5 dice. Okay, this time we got only one basic success. So let's do our reroll. Okay, this time it worked. Not sure what was going on there last time. And now I turned our one basic success into 2 basic successes, which is going to be better. Again, we're not going too much into the mechanics here, but trust me, 2 basic successes are better than a single basic success. After your reroll, if you were able to improve your success, you also have the option to go all in, basically, right? All or nothing. And the same thing applies. Well, kind of. In this case, if I improve it, great. If I don't improve it, I actually lose all of my prior successes. So let's say in this case, it's really, really important for me to get a critical success. I'm going to go ahead and go all in. And, ooh, look at that. It was totally worth it. I got an extreme success, not just a critical, but an extreme. So 4 of a kind. So unfortunately, it turns out that my enthusiasm was a little bit premature because I realized during editing that this actually looks like another bug. So before going all in, I had 2 basic successes. I had 2 heart dice and 2 bullet dice. And then I had a 5th die, which was showing kind of a circle with a diamond shape in it. So when I went all in, it should have only re-rolled that 5th die, because those dice that are already part of a success of a combination do not get re-rolled. Which means that in the best case, I should have ended up with 1 basic success and 1 critical success if that 5th die had turned into either a heart or a bullet. So instead, it looks like it only kept 1 of the basic successes and re-rolled the heart dice in addition to that 5th die, and then ended up with 4 bullet dice and an extreme success. So that's not actually valid. That's a bug, I think. I'm going to notify Two Little Mice of this. I'm sure this is going to get fixed sooner or later, so I'm not worried about it. Just wanted to correct that here in the video in case there's any confusion. So let's do another roll. Let's say we have only 4 dice for this one. And oh wow, I'm rolling pretty well here actually. So I got my critical success right from the get-go. I'm gonna just let this one stand. You'll notice, by the way, it also says press S for free reroll. That's something that some characters might be able to do in certain situations, usually based on a feat that you have. There might be a feat that gives you a free reroll in some specific circumstance. But I don't have that here. Let's do 1 more. Maybe we'll roll. Maybe this is something we're really bad at. So we have only the 2 basic attribute points plus 1 skill point. So we didn't put any points in it. So we're rolling 3 dice. That's kind of the usually the lowest, unless I've taken some conditions, and then actually things will get worse. Okay, so here is no success. And when you have no success, you can't even reroll, because a reroll is a requirement for that is that you have at least 1 basic success. But let's say maybe this character does have a feat that gives them a free reroll, so we'll do that. Still no success. Again, except for that 1 fluke, I think this dice bot works really well. So this, combined with the Google Sheets character sheet that I made, is what I'm planning to use in my upcoming adventure. The other nice thing about this combination is if I say I want to share some images, perhaps NPC portraits or images of certain locations, I can either just copy them directly into Discord or into the Google Sheets. So there are two nice ways of sharing those with players. I really don't need a VTT for that. However, if you prefer using a VTT, it looks like some options are in the works. Someone shared an early version of a Foundry plugin a few months ago, but as far as I understand it, this is still unfinished and I haven't found a way to install it. So I'll keep an eye on that because Foundry tends to be my VTT of choice when I do use a VTT. I also saw that someone created an Outgunned sheet for the Roll VTT at playroll.com, so search for that if Roll is your jam. I believe that alchemy support is in the works as well. Frankly, I'm a bit lukewarm on alchemy after evaluating it for my Vaesen campaign recently, but it does seem like it could be a good match if they work out the kinks, so I'll definitely keep an eye on that as well. Well, that's it for my Outgunned overview. I'm going to run Outgunned online next month at the BSRCon, and I'll report back after my session. If you've already played or run Outgunned, why don't you leave a comment to let me know how it went? Also let me know if there are any other Outgunned related topics that you'd like me to cover in the future. As always, likes and subscribes are appreciated as well. See you next time!